Hello, today we're going to be showing some of the basics on using Google Sheets. My understanding from talking to Ms. Bukowski and Peltier is that most of us should be pretty familiar with using Google Docs, but we shouldn't bet that we haven't really used Google Sheets much. Google Sheets is much like Microsoft Excel. So to access it when you're signed into your school email account, in the corner there's this 3x3 box where it says Google Apps. We're going to click on that, and we're going to want to go down to the option where it says Sheets. And it should give us, kind of like when we go to Google Docs, asking, hey, do we want to use a template, or here's some of our recently opened things. So in this case, we're going to select a blank spreadsheet. Now a few things. We'll see we get this not Excel, but this spreadsheet looks very similar to like you would see if you used Microsoft Excel. Just like in a Google Doc, in the top left corner here, we can title it. In this case, we're going to call it our schedule, because that's really what we're going to end up creating here is a schedule. So the spreadsheets like this can be useful for many different things. Really, it works really well for creating something that's going to be like a table because we don't have to, it's already set up and runs just like a regular table would when we're creating one. It also can be used really nicely for finances, budgeting, and a lot of things like that, which we can get into later if needed. So for creating our schedule, what I can do is if we click on, say, we see there's the grid. If we click on a spot, we'll see the outside of it turns blue, which means that we have selected it. If I want to start putting information in there, with it clicked on, I can just start typing. So I can be like McQuiston's schedule. I can also say now, clicked on it. If I wanted to start changing what it said, I can then, in this box up here where it says f of x, or fx, I can use the cursor and start selecting the side there if I want to start changing what it is. So we'll notice a couple different something here. When I typed in McQuiston schedule on that, if I were to say go over to the next box over and say just 42, put something else in, all of a sudden because that went over into this box, the rest of that disappeared. So there's a couple ways I can go about fixing that. One, I can, if I take my mouse and put it like right between that B and C, I see this little arrow. So I can click and drag to make the column wider or thinner. If it is, say like here where the column is thinner than that, I can also double click on it and it will auto fit so that it's just as wide as it needs to be so that nothing crosses over into the next cell. So, all right, so I have a title. The other option I could have done is I could also take, say, these two cells. If I just click and drag, I'll highlight more than one. So if I were to just highlight these two, there's an option here where it says merge cells. It has the little box with the two arrows pointing in on it. If I click that, what that does is merges them, takes the two cells and turns them into one. So then I can start creating my schedule. So I have two parts to my schedule. I'll say three parts. The hour, what class it actually is, and what room is it in. I'm not going to quite go as extensive as the ones you would have gotten this morning in advisory, but I don't need to necessarily include the teacher name and all that. At least having a basic. So if someone else were to follow your schedule, they can get around room to room and have the same day as you. So we have, in a sense, 8 class periods. So 0 hour, 1, 2, 3, so on. Now typing up to 7, not that difficult, but I do want to show you guys a shortcut as well. I'm going to go ahead and delete these real quick because, again, only going up to 7, that's not hard, but if we did, say, have to go up to, depending on what we're working on, maybe we had to go up to 10 or 100 or 1,000, where typing all that would be rather tedious. If I were to highlight these first 2, so again, just click and drag, this will let Excel see, hey, I have a start of a pattern, 0, 1. I'm counting by ones. So if I go to the corner where there's that little blue box, my cursor turns into like a big black plus sign. If I click and then drag, it'll now start continuing that pattern for me. So I see now 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Since I went further than I needed though, I can either highlight them and hit backspace, enter to delete it, if I just hit backspace on it, or what I could do too if I wanted to say, hey, this whole row, I don't need that whole row. So suppose I also had gibberish here and there. And I'm like, wait, I don't want any of that. I can click on the number here where the row is, right click, and go delete row, and then that whole row is gone. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So when we're creating this, I know we all have advisory right away in the morning. I'm not caring about that. So let's go with what is our exploratory class for this quarter. So like for myself, I teach history of video games. And again, I can see I have that piece where, hey, this goes over into the other cell. So I'm just going to double click that. So that way it fits the same length as the history of video games. And then we can go through our first hour, our schedule. First hour, I help teach pre-algebra. Second hour is my prep hour. Third hour, I teach algebra 2. Fourth hour, again, I have algebra 2. Now, it's the other thing you'll notice. Like in my case, if we were typing the same thing again, when I got the AL, because I didn't have anything else that starts with AL in this column, it started to automatically fill in the Gebra 2 for me. It's pretty much saying, did you want to finish the same thing you had before? So at that point, I can just hit enter, and it completes that for me. Fifth hour, though, I teach pre-calculus. Yeah, that's right, okay. Sixth hour, I teach algebra 2 again. And seventh hour, where you guys are now, is computer 7. And then the room numbers. History of video games, that's in my room here, 250. Pre-algebra, that's in Miss Annenson's room, so that would be 152. My prep, I'm going to say more often than not, I'll probably be in Annenson's room still, since my room is used during my prep hour. And she has prep at the same time. I don't know. I'm just going to put a room number in there. 250, 250, and the rest of this is all in my room. So in my case, my room numbers with my schedule get pretty boring. Your guys' will actually have more variety in it. So I can look at this and say, all right, sweet. So I have my schedule in there. It doesn't look very pretty. So maybe I want everything centered in these cells, in their little boxes. So if I again highlight, so right now where it's like right here in Microsoft, not Microsoft, in Google Docs it has like 3 options. Here I have to click and then it gives me those 3 options, left, centered, or right. I'm going to center it all. And maybe I can sit there and say, hey, this looks weird, so I want to take this big one, I'm going to highlight run over, and merge those as well. If I decided, hey, I have these 3 cells that are merged and I don't want them, I can click it again and it'll undo it. Now they're back to 3 different cells. But I want to keep it that way so this is nice and centered. Yeah. So if I want, say, all right, I see that and I go, yeah, I like the idea of having maybe a border here so that I can actually see the lines for the rows. right next to the paint can, there's one that says borders. And I can decide how I want that border. Do I want every one of the light gray things covered, or just the outside, just the insides? So if I do just the outside, then it, bam. And again, so like there, if I did just the outside, it's going to give me just the outside on that one. I can hit undo. The other piece I could do is, if so, I wanted it like, maybe I want every box there. So I'm going to take this, and if I just do this one, it'll fill all of the lines in the selected area. And maybe I just don't want that part. I can also, when I do this, I wanted to make it pretty, so here has that border color. Maybe I want the border in blue. And I can do that. Or maybe I don't like blue and I want red. If I just change the color though, you'll notice it didn't quite do anything. I have to, oops, wrong one, change the color and then also still select the border I want. So that's where I could say, hey, now that I have the whole thing red, maybe I just decide, no, I still want the outside just to be black. Oh, it does change the whole thing. Well, it was worth checking. I thought it would work. Let's see. If I do it again, there we go. So if I re-went back into it, then select the different color and just the outside, now I have red inside and black outside. Likewise, with the idea of making it pretty, I can change the text color. I also have this fill color, this paint bucket. What that will do is fill just that cell, so not the text, but do the background color, so to speak. Alright, so there's how to create a schedule. Some of the other fun things Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets can do is run equations for us. So, for example, if I fill in just some headlines for us, so if I wanted two numbers, say 13 and 7, I can have it, like I mentioned, this can be used for finances. I can have it find various things. So like the sum, so again, this is when we add two numbers, so 13 plus 7, but suppose I don't know, these numbers might change. So I can say, all right, equals, and I can click, and this tells, by putting equals, that tells Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel that I'm going to be doing an equation. So I'm going to click the first number I want, 13, and then I want to add them in this case. So plus, and then the second number, 7. And I can hit enter and it does that, it adds it. And then I can start changing these numbers, 13 plus 8, maybe I want 5. The difference, same idea, equals my first number, only instead of adding, I'm going to hit the one right next to 0 for minus 5, and it gives me 8. Product, I want to again equals 13, shift 8 for the little star that does, that's going to say times 5, enter, and then my quotient. So this would be dividing, equals 13, and then right next to shift, also with the question mark, my little fraction bar, divided by 5, enter. In this case, 13 divided by 5 would give me 2.6. So there's how we can use Excel or Google Sheets to start doing some math for us. And again, I can start changing these numbers, and I'll see all of those numbers change as well. Alright, so on your own Google Sheet, let's create a schedule and make sure to share it with me. So again, to share it, just like Google Docs, in the corner I have this share button, and I can fill in who I need, in this case, myself, s.mcquiston@PackCharter. Alright, have fun. Ask me if you have any questions.